Hello, I'm Derek Arden and welcome to the autumn series of Monday Night Live. Today I'm delighted to have Eva Fanari from Albuquerque in New Mexico with us. Eva's an old friend of, well, not that old, Eva, an old friend of Monday Night Live. And let me tell you a little bit about Eva. Eva emigrated to the US from Estonia when she was 21, got married, had a couple of kids. She writes a weekly column for an Estonian newspaper, which is quite an unusual thing for an American to do, about what's happening. She's a real estate broker, a trainer, and a professional speaker. And I understand, Eva, it's congratulations, because you've just been appointed the president of the National Speakers Association in Albuquerque. Well done. That's fantastic. And great to have you on. Thank you so much. I think my first question has to be, what do you write about from the States in Estonian, which captures the audience and the editor's attention?
So right now, Derek, I'm writing about the elections that are coming up. And from the point of view, not so much from the point of view what's happening in the news and what the mass media thinks of it, but what people in the grocery store and standing in line are saying about it, and what my colleagues around the water cooler have to say about it. There's a little commentary that doesn't always reach the media, especially if I happen to get them in a safe environment where they think that nobody from the opposing side is listening in. Those are the best conversations.
And 1,000 words is quite a lot to write, isn't it? And do you have to be careful what you write? Because you've just already talked about a politically sensitive issue, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And I know it gets a bit fierce in certain parts of the States.
Yes. But the thing is, when we get to have a stronger emotional reaction to politicians in our own country. And I think what benefits me is that I'm not emotionally attached to either one of the parties in the United States. So I try not to take sides. I think sometimes it's inevitable that I take a side, and I try to add a little humor to it.
And every week? You do this every week?
Every week. I do this every week. Every Thursday at midnight is my deadline. So Thursdays after 4 p.m., that's all I do.
Gee whiz. Yeah. And do you like me when I'm writing my newsletter? Do you get ideas all through the week and
I
try?
do.
Yeah.
I do. It's just, I poke around, I see, I listen in. I have to say, Derek, that this has made me a way better listener than I used to be. Because if you really want to hear and get good material for the articles, then you have to be quiet and let people think. And instead of maybe arguing or feeling like I need to say something that I think in the conversation, I have stopped doing that, because it doesn't really matter. I already know what I have to say about it. I need to know more what people have to say about it.
You are so
Other
right.
people.
Yeah, you are so right. We've discussed this on the show many times. Listening is just so important. It's you know, what the other person's saying and really listening to how and what they're saying. It's you did say I could ask you about Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, didn't you? Even on the recording, what's going on? We see all sorts of things on BBC.
I already saw Tim shifting in his chair just hearing these two names said out loud. I mean, it will be interesting to see.
Go right ahead. I'm not interested in either of them.
In either of them. And I don't think it's decided. I don't think it will be decided until the actual election day. Regardless of who might be performing better on any given day, I don't think it's decided until the election day, which makes it sort of interesting, kind of like a football match, right, Derek? And I'm talking about football, not American football. You know, if the game is kind of decided in the first 10 minutes, it's not nearly as exciting until, you know, maybe the penalty kicks have to be the deciding factor in winning a game. Like, it really keeps you at the edge of the seat. You got to give it to these elections, but there's a lot to write about. I can't say that I don't have inspiration from either one of the candidates.
No, it's odd, isn't it? And clearly Kamala Harris is the ratings of the Democrats have shot up, as we see it in Europe, as soon as she came on the scene. And someone took a pot shot at Donald Trump again this week, I think, or
Yeah, I
was
think
that?
on Saturday.
Yeah.
But yes, about the ratings, it's interesting. Kamala Harris's lead is just by a couple of points. It's not really that significant. And when it comes to the question of economy or the problem of economy in this country, Donald Trump is performing better in polls. People trust him to be the one who's going to fix the economy over Kamala Harris.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess
That is interesting.
In this country, generally, the people did expect the Tories to fix the economy because they wouldn't spend so much money. But of course, our election was a no-brainer because they screwed everything up. So here we are with all sorts of interesting issues. We better move on from that. When we were rehearsing, you told me that you have to have a Ukrainian flag outside your house on a public holiday. And you also, I think, told me that there's somebody in Albuquerque with 52 flags on their front lawn. I've seen Tim's house. He's got about 10. What's that all about?
So Estonian flag. Yes, in Estonia on national holidays, it's mandatory for property owners to put a flag on the house. And there is no such rule in the United States, but people do it voluntarily anyways. And if one house doesn't, then there will be 50 flags in the front lawn in the house next over. I remember the first time I came to the United States, I was in Long Island, yep. And we went to the beach, and it was curious for me to see how every house had a big American flag flying on it. And I thought to myself, yeah, well, if you're in a shipwreck and you watch to the shore over here, you don't have to guess where have you landed. You know exactly where you're at.
Yeah.
But yeah, Americans take great pride in their country. It's a very different approach into expressing their patriotic feelings compared to Estonians. Estonians are more subtle, and the fact that there has to be a national mandate to put a flag on your house when it's the Independence Day kind of shows it.
Do you know if it's the same in other Baltic states? Is this a backlash from, being from communism?
Estonia had that rule in place already in the 20s and 30s as well when Estonia was independent. I haven't really taken a deeper dive into trying to figure out why that is. But the symbols, I think, coming out of Soviet Union, to the approach to states symbols, people are just not really taking kindly to it always in Estonia. It comes across as too propagandistic. So I think for that reason, it actually has to be a mandate for it. But then again, people, it's a good reminder to everybody, you should take pride in your country, because it's, as we have seen over the last couple of years, freedom and for a nation, it cannot be taken for granted.
No, it's absolutely, it's just so valuable, isn't it? I don't think we take enough pride over here in the UK, but that's just my view. Now, I was in Berlin on Saturday, and I sent you a picture of my son and I at the Berlin Wall, didn't I? And you said to me on WhatsApp that caused a bit of anxiety in your mind. It was a trigger and an anchor to anxiety. Is that a playback from the communists when you were in Estonia?
I think so. So there are certain elements and colors and angles that are the same no matter which part of the Soviet Union you went to. And I think it's just seeing those large concrete blocks and that checkpoint, Charlie, because Estonia is at the coastline, and it was the border for not just Estonia, but for the entire Soviet Union. So those checkpoints, you wanted to go to the beach, you had to get a special permission from the party to make sure you're not going to try to swim across the Finnish Bay and escape. And those checkpoints where it's just, triggers, they're somewhere. It's not like a massive trigger. I'm not going into a panic attack, but I feel that knot in the stomach somewhere, just looking at a picture.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And most people don't understand why they get triggers and funny feelings, and actually recognizing why you do get it is halfway to solving the problem. Fascinating. I remember flying from Tallinn in Estonia to Finland. It took about half an hour. You're not telling me people swim it, are you?
You could technically swim, but No, I wouldn't swim. It's not, it's cold. It's the waters are pretty rough, but not as rough as in the ocean. But yeah, people can swim. People have to have, I could take a rowboat. It would take me a while, but you could get over in a rowboat. And rowboat is so tiny, I don't know if any radars would even pick it up. So
I don't know. We won't go there. Lots of people are coming across the English Channel at the moment, of course, in blow up boats
yep.
from the people smuggling. While we're talking about Germany, you told me that you'd read Viktor Frankl's book again recently, which I was fascinated by, Man's Search for Meaning, which I read once. I wouldn't read it again because, frankly, it emotionally upset me what happened. But what did you take away from it the second time?
So many things to take away from that book, but to have a, he's the founder of logotherapy, which essentially puts the responsibility for getting better on the patient and not on the therapist, which I think is something we don't emphasize enough. When you go to a doctor, and I don't know how it happens in the United Kingdom, but in America, when you go to the doctor, oftentimes you walk away with a handful of prescriptions to some kind of a drug without any explanation. What is it going to do for you? Why am I describing this? What makes me think that this might help you? And the authority to make a decision about the human health is still mostly on the doctor. Whilst they think that at least half of it needs to be on the patient. Like I subscribe to that mentality. And I heard, I don't remember really off the top of my head who said it, but the counsel was that whenever you're sick, you have to always ask yourself, what are you doing to get better? And oftentimes when you ask people who have a chronic illness, they will tell you, well, I'm taking this drug and I'm doing this, I'm putting this on it and I'm going to a therapy. But those ones all indicate what the doctor is doing for you. What are you doing to get better?
And we've talked about gut feeling and how does your body feel about things before, haven't we? Many times. And you run spiritual seminars, but in libraries in Albuquerque. I don't know how you find the time for any of this, but we won't go into that. So what do you mentor and coach people when you're running a spiritual seminar?
I talk a lot about how to manage your own emotional body, because sometimes our emotions feel like it's another entity that has taken over our body. But emotions are nothing but cues to us what's happening chemically in our bodies. So there's a process, there's an external event that happens through our senses. We intake the information from that event, and now we have a chemical reaction, and the brain has to now decide, are we going to experience this as anxiety, as anger, as joy, as happiness, and how to manage that, because we have a lot of say in how we feel. And then, of course, the evergreen topic of being able to forgive and let go of past grievances. Talk a lot about this. It varies. I don't have just one specific topic, but my audience will give me topics to talk about. Sometimes I have a kind of like a moment of intuitive lightning that tells me what we should talk about. But I sort of combine, what I'm doing is I feel like I'm the bridge for the conversations that are sometimes difficult to have when it comes to emotions and forgiveness, kind of tie it to the Western understanding of how the human body works.
Is it mainly females that come to that, or is it men as well?
I would say it's about 40% men and 60% women.
Wow. Yeah.
Once in a while, I'll have a session where I have mostly men there.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And do you make them cry?
Maybe on the inside.
Yeah.
But sometimes, yes. There's a gentleman, he always wears sunglasses only, so I don't know what happens behind there. But if I can just make people think and ponder about their own ability and their own power to determine how their everyday life is going to roll into the evening, then I feel like I have been successful.
Sounds very positive, which I think we need to be in those areas, don't we? Because once you get into psychotherapy, it can be quite dangerous when you can open up all sorts of emotions in that in that arena. You said to me that boredom should be relished. I think that was your words, and I thought, well, you know, I never thought about that. If I'm bored, I'm bored. I've got to get on with something else. What did you mean?
Boredom makes us be present in the moment and really sit with ourselves. I think a lot of the distractions that we have around us, the entertainment, the social media, of course, the food we have available to us. Like we oftentimes we feel sorry for people in some other countries, they don't have food. But I want to really differentiate between having a loaf of bread as opposed to having 50 different kinds of breads available to you. It's still, you still have food available. We don't necessarily need to feel sorry for people who only have one loaf of bread available to them. But even when it comes to our food, it's not just one or two types of milk you can buy. The milk aisle alone is half the grocery store long. And we have so many ways to distract ourselves. And the main distraction, why we're so attracted to distraction, is that it creates this busy time for us, so we don't have to sit quietly with ourselves. So when you ask most people, who are you? They don't even know who they are themselves. And we tend to be so upset that the rest of the world hasn't figured it out. You know, you hear this complaint, especially from the young. I don't fit in. I mean, but then again, which teenager ever felt like they fitted in or they fit in, right? But the challenge is that we ourselves have not figured out what we want and who we are. And then we get upset that the world doesn't get us. Do you get you?
You're reminding me of social media. Of course, social media has made that so much worse, hasn't it? It really has. And mental health issues over seeing all these wonderful things that all your friends are having and doing, which really aren't true, but people buy it and people believe it, and they actually don't have enough experience in life, enough wisdom to even know that's the issue. Let's change the subject now and get onto the US housing market. There's some issues going on with that. You told me that the regulator is changing the way commissions are calculated. Give us a quick overview.
Well, difficult to give a quick overview in a nutshell here, but let me give it a shot. When it all comes down to what happened here, then it looks like, let me backtrack a little bit. United States legal system is different from continental Europe's. I think it's a little bit closer to how the Brits handle their legal system. But in the United States, you have something that are called the tort cases. Tim probably can explain a little bit better what a tort litigation is, but it's essentially not people having a problem, but the lawyers looking for a problem and then getting as many people sign off on the problem and then suing typically an organization on the behalf of the people who necessarily didn't have a problem to begin with. The legal system in this country is fascinating. It's an industry. I will call it an industry. Lots of money moves around here. And I understand money needs to be in circulation. So that's one way Americans keep the money circulation is through litigation. And really procedurally, how real estate professionals or real estate brokers specifically get paid has not changed. It's just that a lot of things need to be in writing that previously, when working with people who wanted to buy a property, didn't have to necessarily be in writing in most states. In some states, they already were in writing. But typically, these big cases come from somebody doing a bad job. And there are real estate professionals who are not taking this seriously and are not doing a good job and are practicing some shady behavior. Not being transparent and clear enough how we get paid is what got us to this point. And I feel like as working with buyers and sellers, it doesn't really change anything other than I have 10 more papers to add to the contract.
And that's when, as soon as the regulators get hold of everything, the whole world changes anywhere around the world. We're nearly at the end of the interview before we go to questions, but as we're both negotiators and we love negotiating, and everybody on here is a negotiator in one way or other, what's your 3 top tips for negotiating?
I'm going to give you, Derek, the top 3 tips from the point of real estate negotiations.
Fantastic.
Which that negotiation happens over the course of months. It's typically not one day or 1 hour. It happens over the course of a long period of time. So that takes me to my tip number 1, which is time. Time is so important, and not so much, how shall I put it? You have to create sometimes time. Sometimes you don't have time, but you have to create an illusion of time. For example, if the deadlines are pressing and we need to make some very important decisions with my clients, and these are not the clients whose personality appreciates being rushed. They would like to sleep on it, but we don't have a night to sleep on it. Then creating an illusion of time is, even if they have already made some sort of a decision, I'll tell them, I'm going to give you 10 minutes. Take a break. You go discuss it without my presence and me hovering over you, so that you are 100% clear how you would like to proceed. It's the weirdest thing, but taking that break and giving them permission to pause and comfortably say no if they want to still creates an illusion like they have more time than they actually do.
Wow. Okay. Number 2.
Okay. Number 2, it is clarity in your communication. Words are so powerful, and the way people understand individual words varies from person to person. And that takes me to tip number 3, which is repetition. Oftentimes we need to repeat the same concept over and over and over again to start overriding the previous story the client or customer has about this concept. Because you can explain something to somebody, but if they have a really deeply ingrained understanding of that concept from the past, one time is not enough to override the old story. So those are my 3 tips.
Wow.
Time, communication, repetition.
Yeah, actually, I think there was more than 3 tips there. Actually, I think you cheated a bit, because on number 1, you talked about time, and then you talked about deadlines. You know where deadlines comes from, or my understanding of deadlines was from the Houses of Parliament in the UK, where there was a line where you weren't allowed to cross because the swords of each party couldn't reach each other unless they crossed that line, and that was called the deadline, because they stabbed people. Now, I'm sure there's other explanations for that, but that's certainly the one that I'm sticking to. And on repetition, it's interesting, isn't it? I used to tell people things had to be repeated 3 times, but then I think the psychologist said it could be up to 21 times you need to repeat things, so that and I know 1 or 2 people on here will have other views on that. So Eva, that was fantastic. Thanks for joining us again, I think for the 5th time, all the way from Albuquerque in New Mexico. I'm hoping to come out there one day and look at your beautiful estate. I hope you'll join us again, and can I ask members of Monday Night Live to give Eva a vote of thanks in the normal Monday Night Live way. Will you stay on and answer a few questions?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Okay, thanks that's very kind of you. Good luck with all the politics of being president of the National Speakers Association in Albuquerque. We discussed that last week. Speakers like to speak. Speakers have opinions. Sometimes those opinions aren't the right opinions, but they still need to be heard, and they want to bully their way through it. So we've all faced that. So remember, there's a few people on here that will help you with that if you ever need to chat it through. Eva,
thank you, Derek. I definitely need it.
I saw your body language change at that point. I got it. Great to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me, Derek. Thank you, everybody.